John 1:1 does not say, "And the Word was God."
I'm listening.
We look at the Greek clause at the end of John 1:1, we see ketheosino logo. If a noun is referring to a specific agent that is either well known or has already been mentioned in close context, and both of these things would be true of the use of theos in reference to the God of Israel, then it should carry the definite article. And without it, it is most likely being used qualitatively. In other words, to refer to some quality of the subject of the clause.
On this we agree. Scholarship supports John 1:1c to be qualitative.
Finally, common ground.
A lot of these Greek grammarians who agree with this are then going to go on to say this is obviously distinguishing the persons of the Trinity, the notion that there are three co-equal, co-eternal, consubstantial persons occupying the one being that is God. But that idea is a much later philosophical framework that did not exist anywhere near the time period of the composition of John 1.
That was short-lived. What Dan states here simply is not true, based on the surrounding context and verses, and also looking at the origin of the apostles' use of the term logos. And this use of the term is actually incredibly important to what John is stating. Now, the term logos did not stem from Greek philosophy, nor did it stem from Philo's writings, which Dan asserts in his video on John 1:18. Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum, in his 4-volume magnum opus, Yeshua, the Life of the Messiah from a Messianic Jewish Perspective, points out the roots of John's understanding of the logos would be traced back to the Judaism he was immersed in from childhood, which is first century Israel, not Philo of Alexandria, not Greco-Roman philosophy. It would be from a deep familiarity with the Aramaic translations and the interpretations of the Hebrew scriptures of the Targumim. Within these Targumim, the word memra is used, and it is from the Targumic application of memra that we can pinpoint to the foundation of John's concept of the logos. Fruchtenbaum points out truths about the memra within the rabbinic literature. He states, the first truth about the memra is that it is sometimes distinct from God, but other times the same as God. In all their writings, the rabbis never try to explain this obvious paradox. How is it possible for the memra to be distinct from God, and yet at the same time be God? They taught both statements as being true and left it there. John the Apostle did the same thing in the first verse of the Gospel. When he stated that the Logos was God, he made him distinct from God. Then he stated that the Logos was God, making him the same as God. Like the rabbis, he did not try to explain this paradox at this point, but simply stated it as being true. Later in his writings, he explained these seemingly contradictory statements in terms of the Trinity. The second truth about the memra is that it was the agent of creation. Whenever God created anything, he did so by means of his memra, his word. Everything that exists does so because of his memra. Without the memra, nothing that exists would exist. Therefore, the memra was there at and active in the beginning. Now, we know from passages like Genesis 1:1 and Isaiah 40 verse 28 that God claims to be the creator of all. Looking at John 1:1 in the Greek, and archein o logos, in the beginning was the word, he o logos and proston theon, and the word was with God. Now, in archein o logos, John uses in, an imperfect verb of existence or being, to describe the logos. Now, a key thing here is he uses the word imi, not ginemi. So how long has the logos been existing? As far back as you want to push the arche, the logos was already in existence. The logos is eternal. Ki logos and proston theon, and the word was with God. The logos was with theon, the same theon that created all things. Again, reinforcing that the logos is eternal. John 1:2 backs up the interpretation of the eternal nature. And now we get to a very important point that Stephen Hackett makes. In John 1:3 in the Greek, so far, the logos has been described using imi, particularly the imperfect. Now, in describing creation, he switches verbs and switches to ginemi, reflecting the use in John 1:3. All things came into existence through him, through the logos, and apart from him, not even one thing has come into being that has come into being. John also clarifies who the logos is in John 1:14 and the rest of the gospel, that it is Jesus. So a couple main points from all of this. Yahweh alone is the creator, and John said that the logos has existed before the beginning and created all things, which also reflects the idea of the memra within rabbinic writing. Isaiah 44:24 makes it clear that Yahweh alone is the creator. So to say that the logos creates is to ascribe actions to the logos that are only true of Yahweh. So from all this, we see that there is one God, yet there are distinct figures within this one God. John 1:1c is stating, whatever is true of the Father's divine nature is true of the Son's divine nature.